In the 1850s, long before the first shots at Fort Sumter, Americans were already at war with each other. On the plains of Kansas, neighbors turned on neighbors. Ballots became bullets. Pro-slavery and anti-slavery settlers clashed in riots, raids, and massacres that left the territory soaked in blood. It was called Bleeding Kansas, and many historians consider it the first Civil War. The trouble began with the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, introduced by Senator Stephen Douglas. The act overturned the Missouri Compromise, which had kept slavery out of northern territories. Instead, it declared popular sovereignty. The people of each territory would vote on whether to allow slavery. On paper, it sounded democratic. In practice, it was a recipe for chaos. Almost overnight, Kansas became the battleground for America's greatest moral conflict. Pro-slavery settlers flooded in from Missouri. Anti-slavery pioneers came from the north. Both sides were determined to tip the balance. Kansas would not just decide its own fate, it symbolized the future of the entire Union. In March 1855, Kansas held its first territorial elections. Thousands of armed Missourians, nicknamed Border Ruffians, crossed the border illegally to stuff the ballot boxes. The result? A pro-slavery legislature was declared the winner, despite clear evidence of fraud. Free soil settlers refused to accept it. They set up their own rival government in Topeka. Kansas now had two competing governments, each claiming to be legitimate. The political dispute quickly turned violent. In May 1856, pro-slavery forces attacked the anti-slavery town of Lawrence, looting homes and destroying printing presses. Newspapers called it the Sack of Lawrence. Days later, an anti-slavery radical named John Brown led a retaliatory raid. With his sons, Brown dragged 5 pro-slavery settlers from their homes and executed them with broadswords. It became known as the Pottawatomie Massacre. Kansas descended into open guerrilla warfare. Raids, ambushes, and revenge killings spread across the territory. Families fled their farms. Communities split into armed camps. The violence shocked the nation. Newspapers on both sides published fiery accounts, painting their enemies as savages. Kansas had become a microcosm of the country's divide. The bloodshed in Kansas spilled into the halls of Congress itself. In May 1856, Senator Charles Sumner, an outspoken abolitionist, delivered a fiery speech condemning slavery. Days later, Congressman Preston Brooks, a pro-slavery representative from South Carolina, entered the Senate chamber and beat Sumner nearly to death with a cane. The attack shocked the North and thrilled the South. If Bleeding Kansas showed the collapse of law on the frontier, the caning of Sumner showed the collapse of civility in Washington. The nation was tearing apart, not just in Kansas, but everywhere. By 1859, federal troops restored a fragile peace in Kansas. When the territory finally entered the Union in 1861, it came in as a free state. But the damage was done. Bleeding Kansas revealed that compromise was no longer possible. Slavery would not be decided in legislatures or courts. It would be decided on the battlefield. And so long before the Civil War officially began, America's first Civil War had already been fought on the blood-soaked soil of Kansas.